Good morning, friends. It's Friday AM, at least here on the Pacific Coast. It's time to recap Thursday's action, give you guys the ads, give you guys the drops, the stories, the holds, all that good stuff. Normally, just as a heads up to everybody, normally on Friday mornings, this is when we would do our week in review episode. However, we've pretty much got one game out of everybody right now. So there kind of isn't a massive list that we need to cover in the same way as, looking towards next week. As soon as next week, you're going to have I've got the numbers here. 22, 30. Yeah, you'll have 30 games Monday through Thursday of next week, whereas this week we had 16. Which is effectively the NBA +1. So I didn't really see a reason to do our traditional week in review show. We'll start those on week 2. This is, I guess, kind of a week in review, but it's a modified one. So settle in. We're going to look back at Thursday. We'll make sure that everybody's sort of caught up on what's going on in the NBA. And then we'll have a second show today where we look ahead to the weekend, basically looking towards every single team's next ball game and what we're trying to find from that team. It's a massive look ahead. We're going to be looking at injury news. We're going to be doing a burger board as best we can. Obviously, we don't have news of who's going to play on Saturday or Sunday when we're recording this on Friday, kind of late morning. But that's the plan for today. I am Dan Vespris. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Find me on social at Dan Vespris, DanBesbris. That's where we're going to be doing a lot of our heavy lifting, especially over the weekends when you're not going to hear from me on the podcast. Old Man Squad is the network feed. Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram. That'll have all of our video shorts in one place. So if you like that sort of thing, head on over there as well. Before we pull up the first box score from last night, got to remind you guys, it's that time of year again. The NBA's back from opening tip-off to buzzer beaters. Bet Online has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all your favorite teams this season. Every game matters. Bet Online has every stat, matchup breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the games. And it's not just basketball. It's not just the NBA. Bet Online has odds on everything from football, baseball playoffs, World Series frickin' starts tonight, people. Hockey, political props. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering, Bet Online. The game starts here. Last night, there were 4 basketball games. I figure that affords us the opportunity to kind of piddle our way through at whatever speed we see fit. So let's start with Boston, Washington. Al Horford sucked. Let's just get that out of the way. I still love him. I'm not doing anything with him. He had a really good first ball game. Yesterday, the Celtics ran away with it, and he didn't need to do anything, so other guys just kind of got to do stuff. Same general story for Drew Holiday, who they didn't need him. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Derek White took care of business. Even Peyton Pritchard got 15 points. He got on the action. Nimias Keita had 12 and 7 in 14 bench minutes. Xavier Tillman had 8 points off the bench. So they were able to split up the big man minutes. Luke Cornett played 16 minutes. We need Boston to be competitive. Just have a competitive game. Like, they were certainly competitive, but have a closer ball game, then we'll get more Big Al, because they're going to look for ways to get him off the floor anytime they're beating up on somebody. So just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. But overall, there really was nothing to take away from the Boston side. Nothing. The guys that were expected to be very, very, very good were. And the guys that were expected to be okay were not really. So you move on. Let's talk Washington, because this is the team where, there were a handful of teams yesterday that had some interesting storylines, but Washington certainly was one of them. Jordan Poole, got to start at the top. Jordan Poole, 26 points, 4 assists, 4 steals, a block, and 6 3-pointers. He was kind of the only Wizard that came to play in yesterday's ball game. Got off to a very quick start, had 17 of his 26 points in the first quarter. The Wizards kind of hung in there through halftime, and then the third quarter came and the ceiling came falling in. But a lot to like. Obviously, with Poole, he's not going to shoot 53% every ball game. He's going to be in the low 40s when the season's all said and done. But 17 shots to lead the team, had the ball in his hand a lot. And of the guys that played significant minutes, he had the ball in his hands the most. I don't really have any issue with what went on yesterday. The 4 turnovers were expected. We know he's going to be a high turnover guy this year since he's kind of running point in as much as like Coulibaly and Kuzma and whoever else are also going to be doing a little bit of the point guard stuff, but it's a lot of Jordan Poole there. And so decision-making, not exactly his strong suit. Expect the turnovers, hope for a bunch of points and assists and threes, and free throw percent is going to be positive. And I think he's going to be okay in steals. I mean, this 4 is going to be balanced out by some zeros as we go, but all in all, a really good start. What about the Wizards that maybe we weren't as high on, such as Jonas Valanciunas, who when he signed with Washington, you guys remember back in July, I was like, yes, this is time. And then the fantasy rank board came out, and he was at like 75 or 80. I was like, nope, not doing it. And the biggest reason I wasn't doing it wasn't because I didn't think he was going to play very much. It was because we know he's on the trade block. Valanciunas didn't go to Washington to play it out with a tanking team. He went to Washington to rehab his value, get looks, get shots, whatever, not have to defer all the time, when he's on the court at least. And then I'm sure he'd love to get moved to a contender for the last 2 months of the season and then do it all over again. Unfortunately, the story, as it appears right now, is that I don't know that JV is going to get enough playing time even to rehab his value. Because he's going to be battling with Alex Sarr and Marvin Bagley, although Bagley a little bit more of the blowout name right now. For those center minutes, Kuzma's got the power forward minutes on lock. You know, that the only hope there is that maybe Sarr plays the backup power forward so that JV can get a couple more center minutes. Now, Valanciunas' line wasn't bad. He played 20 minutes. He had 18 and 5, but a lot of that came late when this game was basically done. He's also going to get to play more against teams that have a bigger front court. And so perhaps that's your opportunity if you want to sort of drop him in, do the whole lineup parachute kind of thing. It was a fantasy paratrooper. I mean, that's my new term of the day. Guys that you play only in very specific, easy to understand spots. They parachute in, they have a game, you let them swim away. So fantasy paratrooper. Maybe that's what Valanciunas ends up being this year. Or maybe it's just not going to be all that great. But either way, I have no Valanciunases on my teams. And if I did, I would likely be advocating a wait and see approach here in terms of like, don't drop him after one ball game. That's way too hasty. And, you know, it was a blowout loss and the opponent and blah, blah, blah. Hold for now. I just feel very fortunate that I don't have to actually make this decision myself. Obviously, Kyle Kuzma, you're holding if you drafted him. He's not a guy that I targeted anywhere because you guys know how I feel about his combination of stat set. I get it. He makes more sense in head-to-head than Roto. But I think it's going to be... This year feels like a small step back year for Kuz because more Jordan Poole, Kuzma's on the trade block, more Sarr, more Coulibaly, more Bub Carrington, who left this game with an injury, but you weren't picking him up anyway. The two names I wanted to really highlight on Washington, in addition to sort of the more prolific names, are Alex Sarr, the rookie, and Bilal Coulibaly, who ended up playing 30 minutes yesterday at 8 points, 6 boards, 6 assists, and a steal. Took 2 shots, but did get 8 free throws in his 30 minutes on the court. I am intrigued. And you guys might remember that last year, my take on Bilal was that he wasn't there yet. That there was a push to say, oh, it's go time for Coulibaly last season. I was like, no, we're not going to do this thing. He still has a lot to learn. There's still these big flaws in his fantasy game. I thought, all right, well, like he's someone I would think about as a keeper type because you knew they were going to try to get him more opportunity this year. But what improvements might he make? So last season, my issues with Coulibaly were that he was likely getting more credit than he deserved on the defensive stats side. He was at about 0.9 steals and 0.8 blocks in 27 minutes a ball game. That's not bad, but that means that's basically telling us we need to get him to 30, which he got in the first game here. Shot 43.5% from the field, 70 at the free throw line, only had 1.7 assists during his 27 minutes on the court last year. And so what was the appeal? The appeal was steals, blocks, and maybe rebounds from a guard wing type. This year, I'm a little bit more interested because we saw it in game one. There's going to be some, not point guard, but, ball mover kind of role with Jordan Poole as the traditional point guard. The steals and blocks should be fine. The usage is still painfully low. I don't think that's changing anytime soon. Does the free throw number get better from 70? Can we get him up to 75? Could he push even a little higher than that? I don't know that we need to get out in front of it necessarily here because I like his line yesterday isn't getting everybody racing out of their door into the Bilal store. 8, 6, and 6 is fine. It's sort of Ben Simmons-esque. But I would keep a close watch on it. And if you have some clunker, like I have some roto leagues that were 15 rounds deep, those players that were getting drafted at the end of the 15th round in a 12-team league, like those teams were trash. 180th pick. So I'll go get Bilal in one of those spots, but who am I dropping? Like where? Miami? Otherwise, I think you can probably hold off a little bit longer on making the actual move there. And then Alex Sarr, 22 minutes as the starting center, just got roasted by the Celtics, and it's going to be a big learning curve for him. If you drafted him, you hold. It's as simple as that. He was a last-round flyer kind of pick. You're hoping for some blocks and steals to get you through the rough times here at the beginning of the season. But at some point, it's going to start to click a little bit, and then he's going to be pretty fun. The question is when. Is it December, January, February, March next year? That I don't know, but we'll track it on a day-to-day, certainly. San Antonio blown out at Dallas. Rough opener for Victor Wembanyama. 17-9 with a block, but shot 28% from the field. He'll be fine, obviously. You just, like, if you drafted Wemby, you wanted a Mondo game to start the year just to blow the streamers out in your apartment or home or whatever and kiss your loved ones and laugh about how ridiculous Victor Wembanyama is. It'll be probably game 2, maybe game 3 at the absolute latest, or you'll get one of those Gigantor ones and everything will be fine. So don't worry about that. Jeremy Sohan, 18-6 with a couple of assists, 1 3-pointer, no defensive stats, 4 turnovers, poor free throw, good field goal. I'll be honest with you guys. I remain very much on the fence with Jeremy Sohan. I dodged him everywhere last year, but obviously he is a better fantasy player when he's not the point guard. But is it good enough? I still think the answer is no. And if you're looking head-to-head, the Spurs have a bad schedule this week, so that isn't really the time to take the plunge. If you're thinking roto, I think you can do better with your last pick. I don't know what this season's going to bring, but I don't think it's going to have a whole lot of upside there on the roto side. Harrison Barnes, 17 points in his Spurs debut. I mean, okay, he shot 7 out of 10 in this one, and the rest of his stuff was kind of whack. So, nope. Chris Paul, 3 points, 7 boards, 8 assists. I'd like to see more than 3 points. I know that, hair splitting a little bit because we weren't exactly expecting him to score more than about 10. But I don't think it'd be that crazy to ask Chris Paul to get to like 8 points in a ball game. 7 boards is not going to hold, but the 8 assists might. What I like about Chris Paul in this one was 29 minutes. Don't worry too much about the other stuff. He's 29 minutes as the primary point guard on a team with Victor Wembanyama. And when Wemby's not horrible, which he was terrible in this ball game, Chris Paul will have more than 8 assists. And when they get Devin Vassell back, he'll have more than 8 assists. He needs better options around him. So hold on Chris Paul. Everything's fine there. Sohan, like I said, not really into it. Keldon Johnson, 25 bench minutes. I thought he had a chance to be a top 100 guy with Vassell out. I'm going to rescind that and say, move along. Go ahead and drop Keldon Johnson. There's nothing there. And then Julian Champagnie, who you guys were probably hoping that I would talk about him first in this San Antonio breakdown. Well, I got news for you. I don't do things the way you want me to. Champagnie, 18 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, a steal, 2 blocks, 4 3-pointers on 7 out of 12 shooting. He's a guy that, and we saw it for stretches last year, he does have an okay fantasy game. Like, he had an okay fantasy appeal last season. There just was there were very few opportunities for him to show it off last year. You could go through the game log. Even when he was starting, he was often getting capped out at around 24 minutes a ball game. But when he was turned loose, and basically any game where he got 10 shots or more, he had a pretty good fantasy night. So let's look basically, this is an easy exercise because he didn't crack 30 minutes until, I don't know. When did he crack 30 minutes last year? March 9th. He had one game in November where he took 14 shots, had 13 3-and-3, 4 steals, 3 blocks, 3 3-pointers. He got picked up by everyone. You guys remember this game last year? It was November 14th at OKC. And then he was dropped one game later because he was bad from November 14th, basically all the way until mid-March. And then personnel, whatever, injuries, et cetera, et cetera. In mid-March, Champagnie started getting minutes a little bit more consistently. Not every night, but a little bit more consistently. That game on March 9th, when he cracked 30 minutes. Oh, February 2nd, he had a 30-minute game. My bad, guys, but 5.6 boards, 3 blocks in that one. So again, still managed to find a way. March 9th, 17, 7-5 with a block and 5 3-pointers. March 12th, he played 30 minutes, 10, 3-1 with 2 steals and 2 3-pointers. Not as impressive, but it'll do. And then you start looking, okay, what about the games where he got 10 shots? Which now we should start thinking about that because no Devin Vassell means 15, 16 shots back in the bucket. March 27th last year, Champagnie went for 17-5 with a steal on 7 out of 13 shooting with 3 threes. April 2nd, and this isn't like he had some 30-minute games in there where he didn't get 10 shots, but the other stuff was pretty good. April 2nd, 11, 5-2, steal, block, and a 3. April 5th, 6 out of 11, 15, 4-4 with a steal and 4 blocks. And you guys are getting the idea. April 7th, he took 10 shots, 17, 8-3 with 2 steals. This is down the stretch, so again, there was some everybody's not playing going on, but 9, 10, 11, 12 shots, that's enough for Champagnie to have value. And so to wrap up this Julian Champagnie deal, he should be added pretty much everywhere until Devin Vassell comes back. He is an extraordinarily well-rounded fantasy basketball player. There are issues. Make no mistake, there are issues with his fantasy game. Not a terrific field goal percent guy during that stretch. And so that's the thing that might hold you back. But I think you got to take a shot on it. I'm in take a shot on it mode. Down the stretch last year, he played about 32 minutes a ball game. 12 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, a steal, half a block, 2 3-pointers on 47-84 splits. That put him somewhere in the top 130 range. But again, some of that was sort of small sample size stuff. And a lot of that, remember, was kind of that up and down game log we were talking about. Where sometimes, looking at that stretch of games, sometimes he would just play 20-some-odd minutes and take 4 shots. The hope here is that because of who's in and who's out, maybe we can dodge those games where he only takes 5 shots. If we can't, we can't. And that's okay. But, again, just look at the last 2 weeks last year if you want to limit the sample size more. Top 110 range. I think that's worth a shot. That was on 9 shots a game, by the way. 10 shots a game. That's what it takes. It's a very clear barrier for him. If Champagnie gets 10 shots, he's worth an ad. If he doesn't, he's not. Took 12 shots yesterday. And just kind of looking at the team, I don't know that there was anybody out there that maybe Keldon Johnson takes more than 9 in the next one, but does Harrison Barnes consistently get 10? Nah. This game was also over early, which begs the question, would Champagnie have played more, or was that 27 minutes, is that the number? I think it's worth an ad. I know the Spurs schedule sucks, so head-to-head leaguers, you're like, Dan, stop it. They play tomorrow, and they're done for the week. But they got a 4-game week next week, in the first 6 days. So head-to-head, I think there's a nice argument to be made. Certainly if you're not picking them up today, you're doing it tomorrow on head-to-head. You get, well, I guess there's Oklahoma City goes back-to-back over the weekend, but Roto, I think I would do it. And we don't know when Vassell's coming back. It might be a few weeks yet. All right, let's talk Mavericks. This is the beauty, by the way, of a 4-game card. I can just yammer as long as I freaking want. Klay Thompson had 7 rebounds and 3 steals. I know he had 22 points with 6 3-pointers. I don't care about that. He's going to jack up threes. We know it. Here's the thing. This to me, and I'll tell you why I believe this. This to me is a prototypical sell high moment for Klay Thompson. It's not because I thought he was a guy I was only going to use when Luka and Kyrie were out. I still believe that, by the way. Here's what I want you guys paying attention to. 1, how many shots did Klay Thompson take in that ball game? You guys know. You know it was 13. That's not that many shots. Think about last year. Think about last year, Klay. How many shots did he take last season? And I know he's ranked in the top 10 this year. I don't care about this year. How many shots did Klay Thompson take last year to get to ranked 103 in 9-cat? 14.7. The one thing we talked about in the offseason, the one way that the handicap on Klay Thompson that we did is way off is if his field goal percent comes back up to like 47 instead of 43. But everything we've seen lately suggests that it's going to be more like 43. He doesn't quite have the lift that he used to have. And that this ball game was this massive prove it, I still got it kind of night. And I don't know how long that energy carries over. It might carry over into game 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever. But at some point, the reality of Klay Thompson being an old goat on 2 very, very big surgeries is going to set in. And some of that adrenaline is going to wear off. 13 shots a game. And I get it. I know, blowout. So maybe he would have gotten more if the game was closer. But 13 shots is not going to be enough for him. Also, when was the last time you say you expect Klay Thompson to get 7 boards and 3 steals? He averaged 3 rebounds and half a steal last year. A lot of this stuff. He also shot 54%. Even if you think he's up at 47%, that's not 54. A lot of what you saw yesterday with Klay was the definition of small sample size. He's not going to shoot that well. He's not going to rebound that well. He's not going to steal that well. I don't know what you could get for him. I mean, it helps to be ranked in the top 10 after one ball game. But if you can go out there, and you probably drafted Klay around pick 100, 110 if you did, and if you could go get someone you think is going to be a top 70 kind of guy, I would definitely do it. PJ Washington was one of the other things we were keeping an eye on with this team. He had 11, 6, and 2 with a steal and a couple of 3-pointers, and his percentages were crap, which unfortunately is the thing to worry about with PJ Washington. I still have fleeting hope that we can get that field goal into the mid-40s and free throw into the 70s. And if he can do that, I think he can be inside the top 100. So PJ Washington is a hold if you drafted him. And frankly, I think there are leagues where he didn't get drafted. What's PJ's rostership on Yahoo? 68%? Well, he's not available in any of my leagues. I have him in 1 or 2 places. He's a hold, PJ. And then your centers are both holds. Gafford started, but Lively had the better ball game. Derek played the extra 9 minutes. Both guys were positive when they were on the court. Gafford was a +8 in his 18.5 minutes. Lively was a +5 in his 27. I don't think Lively's getting 27 minutes every night. I think there are going to be games where it's closer to like 24 each. I do, and I think we said this leading into the season, I do think Lively has the better path to minutes. I thought he was going to start, so that was kind of a surprise that Gafford got the starting nod. But, you know, my expectation was that this was going to be more like, and Kleba played 15 also, by the way, that Lively was going to play like 25 or 26, and Gafford was going to be around 20 to 22. Gafford in that range is well inside the top 100. Lively in 25, 26 minutes is sort of like inching up on the top 100. Unless he fixes his free throw stroke, which, I don't know, I didn't see anything to make me believe that that was going to happen. But both those guys belong on rosters. I happen to prefer Gafford. Don't care that he had the worst game here. I think he just puts up fantasy numbers faster. But both guys should be on fantasy teams. Not a whole lot to take away from Oklahoma City. The big storyline, I think, in addition to, of course, Chet Holmgren having a huge game, and he's going to have a lovely season, at least until Isaiah Hartenstein comes back. The big storyline here, I thought, was Alex Caruso only playing 19 minutes off the bench. He took 2 shots, had the lowest usage of basically anybody in the NBA yesterday, but was a team best plus 19 in his 19 minutes. I don't know how that's a guy that you keep off the court, but they did yesterday somehow. 6 boards, 4 assists, no steals, no blocks for Caruso. But again, more than all of that, the 19 minutes was the disconcerting part. You figured with at least Hartenstein gone that the path for Caruso was going to be very easy, and it just wasn't. It just wasn't. Isaiah Joe got the start, played 20 minutes. Casey Wallace got 23. Jang had 13. Wiggins had 19. Lou Dort started and got 28. I didn't think any of those guys even played all that well. Aaron Wiggins, I guess, played relatively well. That's not fair. He had a good ball game. You're not dropping Caruso after one ball game, but if that continues for a week or two, then you would. And obviously, don't worry about Jalen Williams. He had a bad first game. A lot of guys were rusty on opening night. He's not alone there. He will be fine. Move along. The Denver Nuggets had one of the bigger storylines of the night, frankly, and that was Christian Braun playing 29 minutes and scoring 16 points with 7 boards, 2 steals, and 2 blocks on a very solid 8 out of 15 shooting, but no 3-pointers. So how do we handicap Christian Braun? My big issue, and I picked him up in a bunch of places yesterday because I made a pact with myself that I was going to do a better job of not being overly skeptical, and that's been a problem for me in the past. Braun was not drafted in many places because analysts, like myself, pointed to the fact that he's terrible. He's not a good, okay, terrible's not fair, but he's not a great three-point shooter. He shot 38% on threes last year, but he didn't take very many, so it's kind of a weird thing. He's a bad free throw shooter. He had a low field goal percent last year, or low-ish for someone who didn't make any threes. His steals and blocks seemed like they should have been higher than they were because he's extraordinarily athletic, but he only had 0.9 defensive stats in 20 minutes a game. So even if you extrapolate that to 30 minutes a game, the assumption was that he'd be somewhere around 1.3, 1.4 combined, and then he had 4 yesterday. So a lot of what we saw from Christian Braun feels unsustainable. The 15 shots seemed weirdly high. The rebounds at 7 were weirdly high. The turnovers were also weirdly high. But more than anything, the steals and the blocks were out of this world too high. I think you can add him. I got no problem with adding him. Like I said, I did it in some places where I had some easy players to cut, like Keon Ellis, who barely played last night, or like Kel'el Ware, who I was talking about. Like, if you have someone easy to cut, go ahead, pick up Christian Braun. But don't be surprised if the scoring, the rebounding, the steals, the blocks all come crashing back to earth. It's also possible, just because these are things that happen. I mean, the dude was born in 2001. He's not exactly an old goat. I mean, turned 23 earlier this year. He could legitimately just be getting better. So, like, the scoring could be better. The rebounding could be a little bit better than it was, depending on, what unit he's playing with. But guys don't usually just magically become massive steals and shot blockers. Scotty Barnes kind of did it last year. Jumped up in shot blocking. That's a big-time rarity. Guys usually kind of are what they are. Like, Braun played 1,700 minutes last season. It was not a very small sample size. He played all 82 games at 20 minutes a night. We got a pretty good look at what he is, and guys usually do worse in those types of categories when they move into a starting lineup. His looks will probably be better playing alongside Jokic more, but I mean, other than that, other than the field goal percent, you could be like, yeah, maybe that gets better now if he's just wide open cutting to the rim because of Jokic all the time instead of playing with Reggie Jackson as the guy trying to get him open. The other stuff, I'm very, very skeptical. But like I said, I picked him up. I'm ready to drop him after their second ball game. And if you're saying, Dan, who should I pick up between Braun and Champagnie? Honestly, it's probably Champagnie because his stuff was a little bit more repeatable. But his stuff is also better because Vassell was out. So at least with Braun, you're like, yeah, I mean, this could last. And then Russell Westbrook had himself a laugher. I mean, like, who doesn't see this coming at this point? I'll pick on Russell Westbrook. Let's just keep going. Minnesota got a much-needed win after looking very ugly offensively in their loss to the Lakers. Is it possible the Lakers are slightly better defensively this year? I mean, I think it's a lot of just sort of shot-making, shot-taking. Wolves had 23s in yesterday's ball game. Naz Reid had 4 of them. Randall and Ant-Man each had 5. They just made more shots. Julius Randle, 33 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, 5 3-pointers, and nothing else. I mean, that's the fear. I know it's weird for me to look at that line and go, oof. But that's the balancing act. Like, if you drafted Randall, you weren't expecting steals, blocks, free throw percent, or turnovers. And so you have to, that's why you pretty much have to be punting one of those things. But it was a good game for him. So overall, that's fine. Anthony Edwards, big scoring game again. I don't think anybody's questioning whether or not he's going to score the basketball. It's all the other stuff that everybody's wondering about, which is anything else going to actually take a step forward? We'll see. We're only 2 games in. Long way to go. Love what we got out of Naz Reid. This is what I was hoping for. I want Naz taking at least double-digit shots, at least 10, every game. 19, 13, 4 threes. Usually you'll see a steal or a block blended in, but none in this one, so that's okay. We'll forgive him his steal block indiscretions. Mike Conley, 27 minutes. This is enough for me to give a hold recommendation. 9 shots is enough for me to give a hold recommendation on Conley. I know his rank is bad so far this year. You really can't judge him on that. Thinking about last season, he took 8.5 shots a game. He was number 70. So again, 9 shots is enough. 5.9 assists last year. I mean, only 4 in this one. Not as fun, and the team shot better. I guess one of the big fears is, like, is Julius Randle going to get assisted on his buckets in a way that Cat did? Maybe that's going to be the problem here. Maybe Conley can't get to 6 assists because the guy he's throwing it to is not going to be a catch-and-shoot guy anymore. We'll see. We'll see. But Conley deserves a hold because the minutes were there, and that, to me, was the important part. Dante DiVincenzo down to 27 minutes after 31 in the opener. 27 ain't enough, by the way, for Dante. This makes me think, and I know I'm on the roller coaster a little bit here. Sometimes I try to preach patience, but sometimes I'll overreact also. Overreacted a little bit perhaps to the first ball game with Jaden McDaniels in foul trouble and Mike Conley getting the plug pulled on his game early. This might be, I mean, looking at the minute distribution for the Wolves, this felt like what they want to do on a nightly basis because this was a competitive game right to the end. They played their main horses as much as they felt they could. Naz got his time. Conley got his time. McDaniels got his time. DiVincenzo got his. And with Dante, I think you need 30 minutes. I just do. Last year is a bad example for DiVincenzo because he played 40 minutes a game a bunch of times, and that's just not going to happen. 26 minutes with the Warriors got him to top 115 range, so maybe that's what we're looking at here, but it does cap out the upside a little bit as long as the Wolves remain healthy. If somebody goes down, that's how that gets adjusted a little bit. So maybe my preseason top 100 rank for Dante is going to turn out to be right after all. I saw that first game and thought, ooh, I was too low. And now I think I might be right. Keegan Murray played 43 minutes. Guess he had a whole offseason to rest up for that one. Big game, Keegan. Took the second most shots on the team behind new king, DeMar DeRozan. This was an interesting one. De'Aaron Fox went full facilitator mode with 11 assists and only took 14 shots. Domantas Sabonis had 1 assist in yesterday's game. Very weird. I mean, a lot of good fantasy lines for the Kings, but very weird ones. DeMar, kind of what you'd expect. A lot of scoring, some rebounding, some stealsing. I would expect better efficiency from DeMar over the long haul, but I liked the fact that he was heavily involved in everything they did. Sabonis, I'd like to see more assists. This was unusual. They ran more of their offense through Fox. Let's hope that bounces back, because otherwise this could be a bad year. And I'm not in a panic. It's just one game. but 1 assist for Sabonis. I'm like, okay, you know what? How many games last year did Domantas Sabonis have even close to 1 assist? I'll go to the game log now, and I feel like I should have done this before going on air, but it's too late now. We're in it to win it. Domantas Sabonis had 2 assists on March 16th. That was against the Knicks last year. Did he have any games with 1? He did not. And in fact, that 2 was the only time he had 2. He had a 3-assist game against the Clippers. Just was a bad game. That was a weird one. Were there any other 3s even? Yeah. Oh, Clippers twice. So they played him differently. Has issues with the Clippers, apparently, Domantas Sabonis. That was it, though. He never had 1 assist in a game last year. He had 2 once and 3 twice. So that is a little bit disconcerting, especially when you think that, I mean, the team put up a $115. It wasn't a low-scoring game. I don't expect Keegan Murray to get 17 shots a night, but this is an absolute unabashed positive for him as he looks to maintain his value from last year. This is not what folks are expecting out of De'Aaron Fox. I'm going to be watching the next Kings game much, much more closely. They play tomorrow in LA against the Lakers. That's always a game where Sabonis feasts because Anthony Davis is too long to deal with Sabonis kind of getting low and bully him from the hips down. AD just can't handle that. That's the type of player he can't deal with. So if that game looks anything like this one, then there will be cause for concern. But I'm not going to be concerned after 1. Gobert is a giant dude. Julius Randle is a very strong dude. It's kind of an odd matchup. And so Sabonis did more scoring and less facilitating. But the reason you drafted him was not for the points. Keon Ellis is a drop. Kevin Huerter was never an ad. And Malik Monk is only useful if you're targeting points and assists and nothing else. He is a true multi-punt kind of guy and nothing that I've seen. I mean, the role is good for him with Sacramento. He's in a good spot, but there's just not enough for him to do night to night when De'Aaron Fox is healthy. And that, good friends, is your Thursday recap show. Coming up very shortly, we're going to try to drop these shows almost back to back. I'm going to do my prep, and then we're going to record the big weekend preview edition. We'll look at every single team as they go through the weekend. I always do this thing where I forget who played on Friday. I'll try to do better about that. But stay tuned, basically. Make sure you're subscribing. Hit that like button. Comment if you have any thoughts. But the subscription button is the way to go, because then when the next show drops, you'll get an alert that we're looking at everybody. All 30 teams. Does everybody play over the weekend? I think everybody plays. Pretty sure. Nope, that's not true. New York, the Knicks do not play over the weekend. So 29 out of 30 teams we will be covering. Utah doesn't play over the weekend. No, that's not true, though, because they play tonight. So we're looking Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we'll get everybody. We'll get all 30. Bingo, bango. We'll go through it chronologically and get you guys ready so you know what to do if certain things happen Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and we don't have a show, perhaps, to tell you about it. I am Dan Vespers for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Again, thank you so much for everything you've done to keep us growing. I thought it would slow down faster, at least on the pod side, and it has not. So that's all of you guys. Hugs and kisses. I'll see you in the next hour or two with the next show. And on Twitter, @Dan Vespers. Okay, bye-bye.